Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Full Press NFL Sunday on a super wild card weekend Saturday. That's right. We have two games today, three games tomorrow, and of course, Cowboys and Buccaneers Monday night. Our first six playoff games, getting the postseason started. Um, 18 weeks in the books. Whatever happened in the regular season means nothing at this point, except for the teams that have a first round bye. But at the end of the day, records, you can throw them out the window. This is win or go home for every single team. There's no disadvantage from that standpoint. So I'm excited to see some of these games. I said this to you right before we went live here, and you obviously share the same opinion. I don't like the Monday night playoff game. I just honestly, I'd rather if you want to split it up Saturday and Sunday, three games, I am absolutely okay with that. And I wish they would hope they do that in the future. But unfortunately, this year we got a Monday night playoff game.
Yeah, I guess if anything, it's probably a better Monday night matchup than last year's, which was Cardinals and Rams. So at least that's kind of something that I think most fans can hopefully enjoy. Tom Brady and the Bucks, and obviously Dallas is always going to bring in a lot of attention. So maybe that's at least one positive compared to last year. But yeah, we got I believe all the all the matchups this week are rematches from the regular season, three division matchups. Half the playoff field is new teams that didn't make it last year. So just a lot of new faces, new teams, and really can't wait to see kind of who steps up and maybe what young players are going to kind of make their mark for, making their stamp for the future.
Yeah, look, I mean, we have a mix of matchups that are very intriguing and some that seem like the outcome's very obvious. Obviously Buffalo, Miami, Miami starting Skylar Thompson over against Josh Allen. I think it's safe to say whoever was under center for Miami, even Tua, I think the Bills would have been favored and would have very likely won, barring any sort of catastrophic disaster. Basically anything short of a meteor hitting just the Bills locker room. I think the Bills are going to end up having a very comfortable day and very fun day tomorrow as they get ready to really get into the meat of their schedule, which would likely, and depending on who we pick, likely mean a matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round. So, a lot of great things going on here. I think today I'm much more excited about watching this Jacksonville Chargers game just because of this is a game that I picked last when I was going through my picks. I went with the easy ones first, and then I just sat there and I thought, I'm not going to give it away yet. We're going to do that a little bit later in the show. I was looking at it. I'm like, who's going to show up? We all believe. I've said that the best thing for the Chargers might actually be to lose this playoff game, because I think it opens up the door, or at least for the possibility, or more so, that Brandon Staley gets shown the door and they're in the coaching hunt, which I think would be squarely focused on Sean Payton right now. So it may be that the Chargers' best route from a big picture standpoint is to lose this game. However, no player in that locker room, coach, executive is going to go into this game wanting to lose. That's absurd. So not to mention, look, Jacksonville's a pretty good team. Mm-hmm. I think the Chargers have the advantage here, even though technically they're the lower seed here. It's just kind of how the division thing worked. With the same with the Cowboys and the Buccaneers. I think the Chargers are a better team. I don't trust the Chargers. I just can't trust them right now. Certainly, again, with Brandon Staley as the head coach. And what we saw last week was unnecessarily putting this team that is, we've talked about all before, you think about the Steelers, and generationally, it doesn't matter who the coach or the players are. They're a defensive juggernaut, okay? You look at some of the Bears, the same thing. They're always about defense. The Chargers, they're not about offense or defense. They're about injuries. As far back as I can remember, they've had some of the most devastating season-altering injuries from from the early 2000s, mid-2000s. So for this team to go out and test fate in a relatively just a meaningless game outside of, well, you just want to make sure that you're running on all cylinders. you risk injury to some of your best players, and that's exactly what happened. So I think the Chargers are the better team, but like I think this is going to be the most intriguing matchup, certainly of today and possibly of the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's interesting about the injuries is the Chargers probably actually, to me, have probably a slightly worse defense than Jacksonville, based on just what we've seen the last few weeks. I mean, we know the Chargers' run defense was one of the worst in the league most of the season. So you kind of combine, the injuries and really the talent advantage is almost neutralized for the most part from that standpoint. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if they lose this game. If that was if the Mike Williams injury is really going to be a big tipping point for getting Staley out, regardless of what kind of result happens today. But I think the biggest thing, if you do lose and you're Justin Herbert and they replace Staley, it's just I think it's something that he has really kind of almost plateaued. Still, obviously playing really good football, but just seems like if you're able to make that change, you're kind of preventing Herbert from possibly staying stagnant, as this team kind of is very close to probably hitting their prime with him.
And look, I mean, this type of opportunity with a guy like Sean Payton out there doesn't come around all the time. We're not talking about, you're moving on from Brandon Staley to take a swing at, with one of the young up and coming coaches or a guy that, has rebuilt his reputation, because we see this all the time in the NFL hiring process. It's either the recycled safe head coaching hire that it's like, okay, we just need to make a safe hire, and that ultimately is okay, but it doesn't always lead to taking the next step. Or, oh, we're gonna, this guy's name is hot because he worked with a great quarterback. Well, I think we've learned more often than not, the quarterback is usually the most important aspect of that coach's success. And that's not to say that the coach isn't good. It's the nature of the game. Like, you can only have as much success as the players that you have. Like, you can't, like, you might be able to win a game or two with Skylar Thompson, but let's face it, you're not going to have success. Winning and success are two different things. Like, any team in the NFL can win a game any given week. Success is a whole different matter. And if the Chargers, again, a team that could, say they win this game and go on to the divisional round, as much as I have little faith in the Chargers, damn well that they're going to give the Kansas City Chiefs a run for their money. And
Right.
would it be shocking if they won that game? Yes, but not entirely. So, yeah, the Chargers are capable of beating any team in the league. I just don't think they're capable of having success. And success means realistically competing for a Super Bowl, not just making the playoffs by the skin of your teeth. So, big picture, I think the Chargers would, they're for the better part of their franchise, and for at least the betterment of their quarterback, might be better to lose this game. But that's just not how the NFL works. And unfortunately for them, if they do win this game, regardless of what happens next, because again, they would very likely play the Chiefs. And, well, I don't think Brandon Staley's going to get blamed for losing to the Chiefs if he's already won a playoff game, and it's probably going to buy him a longer leash, which, again, big picture wise, is probably not what you want to set your franchise up for. So, who knows? Like I said, we could get a lot more or many more answers to those questions by the end of the night tonight if the Chargers lose this game, because I think if they do lose this game, I think it's almost a 100% guarantee that he's going to be out, or very, very close to it, like 95-ish, because if they do lose this game, I think it's because they underwhelm on offense. And the reason why they underwhelm on offense is because of injuries. And these injuries, well, guess what? Some of them happened at the very last game of the season, and I think you can point directly at the coach for that. So, all right, outside of Jacksonville and the Chargers, what other matchup this weekend, either today, tomorrow, Monday, are you probably most excited for in terms of just either watching it, the implications, anything?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Giants and Vikings tomorrow, and it's just kind of really just seeing the Giants back in the playoffs for the first time in a while. I think it's just a team growing up. I'm kind of used to seeing them in the playoffs with Eli Manning, so seeing them back is kind of a nice thing. And I think just the style that they play with, a lot of young players, but just kind of a scrappy, gritty team that's going to make you fight for everything. And Daniel Jones, I think, is not not the biggest problem they have. So he's really helped himself at least, given himself a chance to maybe be the starter one more year at least in New York. And Minnesota, it's just I don't know if they're a team of destiny. I mean, we saw another purple team in college football, TCU. I mean, they were kind of just cockroaches the whole way. They just don't die, and it's hard to fully extinguish them. So are they kind of a team of destiny, or is everything that they've kind of been able to build up to this point going to blow up in their face in 1 week? So just a lot of different directions that I think this game could go. And it's just, I think a lot is on the line, I guess, for the future of this team in the short term, especially at the quarterback position. So I think there's just a lot more riding on the line maybe than what's necessarily been spoken of national headline wise.
Like, I completely agree that Minnesota might be a team of destiny. I just think the fate of that team is. I think we might be thinking of different outcomes,
Yeah.
different types of destiny in this situation. Because I agree with you. It's the other game that I'm really, obviously, outside of Dallas and Tampa Bay and being able to watch Brady. The most intriguing matchup to me, because this Minnesota team, and we've talked about it. I've talked about it. Everyone's talked about it. Negative point differential, 13 win team. How is that possible? It doesn't even seem to add up. But when you look at and dissect what this team is, well, they're a team that wins a lot of very close games. They set a record for it. And they've been blown out. And I think there's still people that have faith in them, but I think it might be, or I feel like I know it is a bit of fool's gold, because I obviously the comeback is great. The
Hmm.
comeback against Indianapolis, that's going to be talked about in Vikings lore forever. I mean, it's going to be right up there with, some of the other great moments in their history. But the reality of it is they were down 33 points
Hmm.
to the Colts, who are 1-7 under Jeff Saturday, and obviously not a great team at all. And you were down 33 points for that with that team. And again, I'm not taking any credit away from the comeback, but I feel like since that moment, people, and myself included, because I said it right after the game, it's like I had no faith in them, but they somehow convinced me. Well, maybe that was just a mirage. Like,
Hmm.
because first of all, they go down by 33 points again to any other team. There's no way they're coming back. Hell, I don't have a lot of faith in them coming back from even half that type of deficit to another team, because, well, I don't believe in the Vikings. So I do agree with you that they might be a team of destiny. Just unfortunately for Vikings fans, that destiny might be having their season over by January 16th or 15th rather. So, all right, let's really get into these games and pick them now, because we only have 6 games to talk about, so we're not going to be able to breeze through it like we did in the past. We can add a little bit more context to our discussion here. So let's start off right away with San Francisco hosting Seattle. That will be 4:30 Eastern Standard Time this afternoon. We mentioned kind of when we started this discussion that there were several games that seemed like the outcome was very, very obvious. And look, for good reason. I think Seattle had a really nice first half of the season. They've stumbled a bit down the stretch. Week 18 was not a good week for them. So you're kind of, your confidence is waning, and then you realize that they're going up against a team who's won 10 games in a row and look like the most complete team. The one caveat being Brock Purdy. And look, he hasn't given us necessarily any reason to doubt him, other than he's a rookie 7th round 262nd overall pick, and eventually, even if he's destined to be a great quarterback, this early on in these situations, their mistakes are going to happen. So to me, I look at San Francisco and I say, man, this team could absolutely steamroll through the NFC, but their whole thing is being held together, in my opinion, by a very thin piece of masking tape, and that's the quarterback. And at any given moment, he could have a rookie moment, and that could be in the playoffs a devastating thing for the San Francisco 49ers. However, I don't think is going to happen today. Maybe this game will be a little bit closer at the beginning, but I think ultimately the 49ers are going to run away with this because Seattle, like, they hit their peak and they've really just kind of come back to earth and very barely made the playoffs. So at the end of the day, me, like many other people, I'm sure, are going to I'm going to take the 49ers.
Yeah, and I know it's hard to beat a division opponent 3 times in the season, but San Francisco really kind of dominated those first 2 matchups. Even with the first one, Trey Lance got hurt, and we saw Jimmy Garoppolo have to come in. The thing that's interesting with Brock Purdy, I think, if they obviously are able to make the Super Bowl, I don't know how many people know this, but a kid that grew up in Arizona, he played his high school football about 45 minutes away from where the Super Bowl is going to be played this year. So if they're able to win the NFC, obviously that'll be about as good of a homecoming as you could ask for. But I think what's interesting is all these quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan's had to use. They're very similar in just being able to run kind of the T of his offense, not necessarily having to do anything too flashy. A lot of quick passes, a lot of passes into space in the middle of the field where it's gonna force the defense to make tackles immediately. So I don't think he's necessarily doing anything that's that different than what we've seen from guys like Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard when they've had to come in for the 49ers. But it's just kind of one of those different situations where his inexperience is what's going to be the biggest question mark, like you said, a rookie 7th-round pick. So for Seattle, like you said, I think it's just they've really run out of gas. What's going to be interesting is I think the coaching might actually favor Carroll just a little bit, but and I think there's like a big thunderstorm there right now. I don't know how that's going to become game time, but for Seattle, as much as they like to pound the rock, I think this is too tough of a defense to kind of rely on that style of play and that brand of football. So I think the Niners will kind of win by a couple of scores here, and I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how Geno Smith, how much he's really going to be given chances to kind of lead this team, or if they're going to truly rely on the run game all day long.
Yeah, and look, I mean, for Geno, win or lose, you can go out and, excuse me, have a great playoff game, and that's going to further help your case because, if anything, Geno's revitalized his career just by this season, and yeah, I mean, you take into account that they've kind of again slipped down the stretch, but no one expected this type of season out of Geno Smith. Hell, he has the record for most passing yards in Seahawks history in a single season,
Wow.
and yeah, it's surprising. I mean, again, extra game and whatever, but it kind of just speaks to how the Seahawks were able to not only essentially replace Russell Wilson physically, but production wise, you got kind of the best version of Russell Wilson in Geno Smith. So, all right, next we have the Chargers at Jacksonville. We've already kind of talked about this game a little bit at length. I ultimately did. Again, choose the Chargers. I as much as I don't have faith in them, I almost feel that like this would be the most in my like I said, my opinion is that for them is to lose this game and move on from Brandon Staley and do whatever you can do to get Sean Payton. So naturally, the most Charger thing in the world would be to come out and win this game and really put that to bed and set themselves up for failure moving forward. But I think Justin Herbert's going to do just enough to get this offense over Jacksonville, who I love what Trevor Lawrence has done, especially in this latter half of the season. He's really taken huge strides, but it is still his first playoff start. And I don't know how much that's going to be a factor. I don't think it's as big of a factor generally, but I don't know. I flip a coin on this game. I really don't. I sat and stared at this game and I was going back and forth. I'm like, Jacksonville at home, Chargers have a little bit more experience. I think they're a little bit more talented altogether. So I'll go with my gut and I'll say the Chargers. Like I said, if anything, it's the worst possible thing for them to do for the greatness of their franchise moving forward. So naturally, the Chargers will win this game.
I went with the Jaguars. Ultimately, it's like you said, it's truly a coin flip. I think for me, it's probably the two. I mean, Chargers. It's tough to kind of say this, I guess, with what happened last week, but possibly the two best finishes in the AFC. I think for teams that made the playoffs to their regular season, and I just think the Jaguars for me maybe playing a little bit more complete right now. So maybe that's kind of the best reason that I could give. I do think it's going to be tough for the Chargers defense, I think, to kind of handle the speed and power mix of Jacksonville's skill players. Evan Ingram has kind of become an X factor, and then you kind of look at what Travis Etienne's been able to do with his long speed. So I think those are going to be the biggest things. Is Jacksonville's got a little bit more playmakers to me right now, even if the top end talent of the Chargers might be a little bit ahead of Jacksonville. But I think it'll be close in the end, and maybe the Jaguars defense, which is a little bit better than LA in my mind, makes one big stop, gets off the field, and I think they'll find a way to squeak it out.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up ETN because he has the potential to have a really big game against a relatively porous Chargers run defense, especially if it's banged up, if they're banged up on that defensive line. So, yeah, it would not shock me if Jacksonville won this game. I think, looking ahead, and like I said, I think the winner of this game is essentially going to end up playing the Chiefs.
Right.
In the divisional round because they will very likely be the lower seed unless we see something miraculous and everything gets thrown upside down. But I think the Chargers, for very obvious reasons, are a worse matchup for the Chiefs moving forward. You kind of said it in our last discussion. It's hard to beat a team 3 times
Right.
In a single season. It's not to say that it can't happen. It certainly can, and that's not a reason to pick against Kansas City. But it's something about those divisional round opponents, and if any divisional rival gives the Chiefs at least some run for their money, it's the Chargers. So
Yeah.
Looking ahead to next, I was going to say looking ahead to next week, if you're the Chargers, you want Jacksonville, although that's not going to be an easy out either.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, every game between Herbert and Mahomes has pretty much come down to the last few minutes too. So definitely going to be the toughest matchup that they could see, and seeing how the Chiefs, have struggled at times, to play complete games offensively. That's it doesn't really matter how bad the Chargers defense is. It's going to be kind of blow for blow if it comes to that matchup.
Yep, no, I agree, and should be a fun one. So, I do want to see the from that standpoint. I want to see the Chargers win, just because I think it'll give us a really good matchup in the divisional round.
Right.
We could potentially have 2 really, really good divisional round matchups in that conference. But we'll see. So next we have another, third matchup between 2 teams, and that's Miami at Buffalo. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier to start the show. Miami's down to their 3rd string quarterback. They have not looked anywhere like the team that they were in the first half of the season when Tua was when the talking point was the Dolphins are undefeated when Tua starts and finishes a game. And look, they rightfully so looked like an elite team, but over the last couple months of the season, it has not been that. Part of that is injuries to Tua, but this team has other issues that were kind of rear its ugly head, so to speak, towards the end of the season. And I think inexperience at the coaching position and certainly at the quarterback position is got this team doomed before they even hit the field. So even with Tua, I would have picked Buffalo in this game. This is almost as good as a bye week if you're Buffalo, and you're probably, in my opinion, going to get a repeat of what we saw last year in the wild card round, and that is Buffalo steamrolling the Patriots. Well, in this case, it's the Dolphins' turn. So give me Buffalo in a romp.
Yeah, I being from Kansas, I got to see a lot of Skylar Thompson playing college football, and for how long he was at K-State, I mean, it seems like he kind of regressed from a passing standpoint his entire years there. Kind of became more of a dual threat running quarterback. I mean, even some people wondered if he'd become a tight end in the NFL. So it's a tough situation where you're not just missing Tua. Raheem Mostert, I think, is out. A couple other guys, I think, doubtful. So this entire team is just banged up right now. And Buffalo, I think it's just so much kind of energy and motivation that they have, obviously, for playing for DeMar Hamlin and being able to open the playoffs at home in Buffalo with him back at home. So there's so much kind of good fortune, good energy, along with how good of a talent Buffalo is already. And then you kind of combine that with just Miami. It's another late season nosedive, and yeah, like you said, it's probably going to be a romp. I think this has the potential to probably be the biggest margin of victory this weekend. So I like the Bills.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it seems like it's destined. Talk about destined, destined for a repeat of what we saw last year between the Bills and the Patriots. So, all right, New York Giants at Minnesota, and again, you mentioned this as the other game that you're really looking forward to. I agree. I thought I thought they were Minnesota. I lost my train of thought for a second. I thought Minnesota was again questionable coming into the playoffs. And the more I think about it, I keep telling myself, how can I ever put any sort of faith in the Minnesota Vikings? Do I think the New York Giants are the 2007 New York Giants? No, I don't think that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. However, I think they have, to some degree, a lot of the same elements of that 2007 team. They have a very good defensive front. They're pretty good on offense. And Daniel Jones is capable of doing some nice things. Again, much like Eli Manning, he was just again. I'm not buying anything long term, but I look at this and I'm like, this is the most obvious upset of the weekend, and I'm going to go with it. I think the Giants are going to go in and beat the Minnesota Vikings, a team that they played very well not too long ago. And again, I'm not comparing this to 2007, but we remember week 16 or week 17 rather. The Giants, they host New England and they give them absolutely everything that they can handle in a season. Obviously, the Patriots won that game, but a month and a half later, sorry, it still hurts anytime I think about Super Bowl 42. But the point being, I think my Minnesota certainly not at any level of what that '07 Patriots team is, and I think maybe not as bad as that Pittsburgh team that started 10-0 a couple years ago. That seemed quite obvious. That was not really a great team. I think this Minnesota's team is talk about destiny again, destined to lose this game. So I'm going to go with the Giants.
I'm going with the Giants as well, and I think it's kind of a tough matchup for Minnesota given how bad their defense has been. I know they're kind of down to they're really kind of down to the end of their depth chart at cornerback. So I don't know how much that really matters for a matchup with the Giants, but this has been a leaky defense all year, and I think you kind of combine that with just kind of the physical style of New York and a team that has seen Saquon Barkley kind of reemerge for them this season. There's just a lot of different ways I think that the Giants can kind of find success against that defense. And for Minnesota, it's kind of one of those situations where the coaching, two first-year head coaches, I think Dable's probably been a little bit better situationally. And yeah, I think there's a lot riding on Kirk Cousins and what's he going to be able to do, I think, against a kind of deep and fast pass rush. So to me, I think this is one of those games that there's a lot of long drives. There's a lot of kind of just, cheap yards or gritty yards that are going to be picked up. So I don't know if it'll necessarily be pretty, but I do like the Giants to go into Minnesota and win this one.
Yeah, this is going to be. You said it right. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be kind of that quote unquote smash mouth football. And there's no worse. There's nothing worse to hear than having a lot on the line for Kirk Cousins. Like you said that or something along those lines. Like there's a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins. What I don't like, if I'm a Vikings fan, I'm not hearing that. That gives me anxiety. So yeah, I think ultimately the Giants are just going to eke this one out and set up a very intriguing matchup with the Eagles because they very likely would be the last seed remaining. So, all right, Baltimore at Cincinnati. And before we get to that, Rucker, I will get to you in just a moment. I saw in the chat that you're preemptively celebrating something that people have been celebrating for a decade now. So we will get to that game in just a moment. But first, we will have to go through the process of us both picking Cincinnati. I think I feel confident enough to say Braden, that you're probably going to pick the Bengals too in this situation, and rightfully so. I mean, the Bengals could very well be the best team in the AFC. They could. I
Right.
think that the top three, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, you can make a case for all three of them, just as you can with the quarterbacks. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is going to win, and deservedly so, the MVP this year. But I almost feel like there's no quarterback outside of number 12 in Tampa, and for many reasons other than currently what's going on right now. I don't think there's another quarterback I trust more than Joe Burrow in terms of when, no matter if it's hectic, not hectic, big high scoring game, low scoring game, it doesn't matter to me. I think Joe Burrow is as cool and calm as you can possibly be in any given situation. And I think that means, I mean, a whole hell of a lot from the quarterback position. But at the same time, the Bengals are a very talented team on both sides of the ball. So again, you add in that element. I look at, well, first of all, I look at this game as much like that Buffalo Miami game, as maybe not a romp, but I think the Bengals control this from start to finish, and there's really no suspense to it. Which again would just be kind of the warm up for next week, which would set up a Bills and Bengals matchup that obviously we didn't quite get earlier this season, but we will get in the divisional round. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, give credit where credit's due. Patrick Mahomes is the guy who's gone out there and done it, but I look at Joe Burrow as there's something he has that I don't think many quarterbacks have, and I don't think that's a necessarily. It's hard to quantify in my opinion. So I look for him to go out there, have a great game against Baltimore, because, well, Baltimore is just not a good team. Next weekend's going to be huge though when it comes down to Buffalo and the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you mentioned them as possibly the best team in the AFC. It is razor thin, but I do think right now they are probably the best team in that AFC conference, even as the 3 seed. So just talking about Burrow, I mean, yeah, it's hard to teach, some of the things he does and some of the stuff, God-given ability that he has. And you kind of have that mixed in with the confidence. It was really cool to kind of see that quote last week of, just him talking about his entire career basically will be the Bengals playoff window and chance to win a Super Bowl. So he's been able to back it up his entire time basically in the NFL when healthy. And I think there's a lot of just kind of unsung heroes also with this Cincinnati team that really makes this team so versatile, so dangerous. I think Joe Mixon is kind of one of the maybe not underrated, but a little bit underappreciated running backs. And of course, defensively, I mean, I think defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, probably one of the most, dangerous when it comes to what quarterbacks are going to be seeing, each and every drive, every quarter. It seems like he's throwing new looks, new adjustments at you. So there's so many things to like about this Bengals team. And for the Ravens, I mean, it's kind of like the Packers. I think we talked about it on the Studs and Duds episode earlier in the week, where there's just so many questions for this team right now. Not sure if Lamar is going to be back. You may have to kind of go a different way, offensive coordinator, if he does return. So this feels like I guess we talked about a good thing for the Chargers kind of losing earlier. I think obviously the Ravens, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be leading to a good future, but you kind of want to just see this version of this team be put out of their misery right now, so to speak. And yeah, I expect a big win for Cincinnati.
Yeah, just unfortunately for the Ravens, and you kind of mentioned it, it's the Lamar Jackson thing that's hanging over the head. At least for the Chargers, they know Justin Herbert's there. He's not going anywhere. We don't know what's happening with Lamar Jackson, even if he does come back. I mean, health has to be a question mark with him moving forward. And look, any quarterback that I know running quarterbacks and everything like that, that's it's a great thing to add, and we talk about it all the time with Josh Allen. If he keeps doing what he's doing, he's not going to have this 15, 20-year career in the NFL. What's up, Cat? For those listening to just the audio version, my big, very fat cat decided to come down from above. But, if he keeps, playing the game like he does, there's no one's questioning his toughness, but eventually your body's going to break down because you just there's certain things that you need more as a quarterback that you just can't like take a beating over and over again. Lamar Jackson, same thing. He's so dynamic with his legs, great thrower of the football, but eventually, we're seeing this now. He's getting banged up, and you know what? Maybe he is a little bit hesitant to come back because of the contract situation, which
Mm.
I'm not necessarily going to blame him. But
Mhm.
yeah, this could be a very messy offseason for the Ravens, and yeah, we'll see. So, all right, last but not least, Monday night, Dallas at Tampa Bay. I'm obviously taking the Buccaneers, and it's not with great confidence that I say this necessarily because I haven't seen enough consistency throughout the season from Tampa Bay on both sides of the ball to really um, go and bet the farm that they're going to win this game. However, uh, Dallas, on the other hand, you're looking at a team who, is particularly at their quarterback position, have turned the ball over quite a bit, and we've been harping on this on anything that we broadcast, whether it's the Full Press NFL podcast, whether it's NFL Sunday, if it's FBC Radio Live. The turnovers are what's going to do this Dallas team because I know the the narrative for much of the season was Brady was washed and whatever. And like I said, I'm having deja vu because I'm like, this is exactly what happened in 2019. Now, maybe that's not a great example because, well, Brady was one and done in the playoffs in 2019, and all these things kind of came to fruition. However, just like in that situation, I look at Brady physically, and I don't see this huge drop off. I look at him, in the pocket, I don't see the same thing. It's a lot of, well, you know what, this team struggled through quite a bit this season, and they made the playoffs at 8-9 because they won in a bad division, and that's fine. So how am I so confident that they're going to win? Well, I'm not necessarily confident. But like I said, look at Dallas. Look at what they've been doing as a team. Not terribly impressive. Add in the fact that Dak Prescott is turning the ball over at such a rate that no team's going to win in the playoffs doing it that way. And if you're going to give Tom Brady in this offense extra possessions, they're going to make it count because one of the things that Tampa Bay, and one of the reasons why they lost a lot of games this season, was for much of the season they weren't creating turnovers. And you're not going to win a lot of games when you don't create turnovers. Well, they've started to do that to some degree the last couple of weeks. I think going up against Dallas is really going to help them make a few of those turnovers. And I think they pick off Dak Prescott twice. And I think the Buccaneers have not a comfortable win because they're incapable of having comfortable wins ever. But I think they walk away with a solid confidence building victory because you get this one playoff win out of your way. All of a sudden you're looking at it. Hey, we're 1-0, not 8-9, not 5-7, not, scrapping for a division title with bottom feeder teams. No, you're 1-0. And all of a sudden who's going to go up and bet against the Tom Brady led team? Not too many people.
Yeah, and I guess it's just kind of looking at the playoff field. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks compared to Tom Brady, obviously. So I think it's probably the best matchup in a way that the Bucks could have got for Wild Card Weekend because this is a team that I believe averaged 18.4 points per game during the season. But I think the good thing is we know the playoffs. It's a whole different animal, whole different style of football. So some of that stuff isn't completely going to matter once the calendar flips to the playoffs. And even as much as Dak has struggled, I think the Dallas defenses has started to show some weaknesses as well. I know some people are worried about the Tampa Bay offensive line, but we know how Brady can kind of just beat you with simple throws to the flats and kind of those quick passes to the tight ends or the running back. So it's kind of a Dallas defense where it takes a lot of gambles, obviously, in the back seven. We know how Trayvon Diggs is, but also a little bit more banged up unit than they were to start the season. So I don't really think the Dallas defense is maybe as scary of a matchup as what maybe some people are putting out there for this team. So it's to me, it's the perfect matchup they could have got. I don't know if there was a lot of confidence in me saying that Tampa Bay was going to win any playoff games, but just seeing this matchup with Dallas and obviously having Brady on your side, I'm not going to bet against him when he's facing the version we're seeing of Dak Prescott right now. So this could really be an exciting game, I think, from start to finish outside of week 1 this year. They've really played some really tight games and had some exciting finishes the last couple of times they've faced off. So I'm kind of hoping we see the same thing. It's just may not be quite as flashy or as pretty as what we saw to begin 2021, I think it was.
Yeah, and if excuse me, if this plays out the way we both feel with the Giants beating Minnesota, this would set up a very juicy matchup between the Buccaneers and 49ers. Buccaneers and 49ers next week in San Francisco, or the following week, or whatever it is. Hopefully they end up playing on the Sunday or Monday. I don't know, who knows. But either way, it could set up quite an interesting storyline filled matchup. So, all right. That's going to do it for us here today on a super wildcard weekend version of Full Press NFL Sunday. So don't let the ticker on the bottom fool you. I forgot to update it, and I didn't realize it until the very end of the show. So this is not a Week 18 preview. We've already talked about AFC playoff scenarios because, well, we know the AFC playoffs. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back again next week as we start to turn our attention to the divisional round, and look for us maybe early in this week as we react to what we saw this weekend. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at Full Press NFL. And of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com to check out all the latest and greatest. So thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.